Good evening. I'd like to call this regularly scheduled meeting of the Marquette Township Board to order for Tuesday, September 16th, 2014. If you'd all please rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Clerk Rattari, roll call, please.
Trustee LaRue?
Here.
Trustee Durant?
Here.
Trustee Truscott?
Here.
Trustee Pompo?
Here.
Treasurer Johnson?
Here.
Clerk Rattari is here, and Supervisor Limata.
Here.
Staff here tonight is Manager Gerard and Public Works Superintendent Kirk Page. Committee members, Fire Chief's here too, Bob Sims. Committee members here are John Marks from the ZBA, Dave Wiegand from Roads and Recreation, and Dan Adamini from Recreation.
Alan Sargent from Planning.
And Ellen Sargent from Planning. Excuse me, Ellen.
Thank you. The next item on our agenda is the consent agenda. As you know, those items on the consent agenda do not typically require immediate board action. This evening is the approval of the prior meeting minutes of September 2nd. Received committee reports of the Township Advisory Council, approved minutes of June 4th, Sheriff's Report of August, Water Production Report of August, correspondence from a resident regarding Mark Tran driver, and bills payable in the amount of $99,765.10. Are there any items on the consent agenda that any member of this board wishes to remove for further discussion? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Motion is second to approve consent as presented. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion passes. Thank you. The next item on your agenda is approval of the remainder of the agenda. I do, however, have a written request received yesterday on agenda item number 9D. Consider firefighter hiring recommendation. I have a written request from Chief Sims and Township Manager Gerard. The request to move that item to the agenda of October 7th of 2014. And then I would note that you'll notice that your agenda goes from item number 9, new business, to 11, public comment. I would renumber those as, instead of 11, 12, 13, and 14, as 10, 11, 12, and 13. Ernie?
Consideration, the article that is in the paper about the reimbursement for winter work that all the communities did. I've had a number of people talk to me, ask the question why we didn't get it, why we're not part of the group. And I think we as a board need to address it so that the community knows why in detail as to why we have it.
And I would be happy to put that on the next agenda if you would like to have that conversation.
That would be fine, I think.
Anyone else? Clerk Rattari?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda with the deletion of 9D.
Support.
Motion and support to approve the agenda as amended. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion passes. Agenda is approved. Thank you. This is going to bring us up to public comment. Those members of the public wishing to make comment may do so at this time. Approach the podium. First name, last name, and address, please.
Dan Adamini, 50 White Oak Drive. Actually, although I'm a member of the rec committee, I'm not representing the rec committee here tonight. But I did notice on the agenda that they're back on 9C3, hill removal. And I haven't really looked at the issue, and I'm not sure what when you get to this discussion, what the purpose is for the hill removal. But one of the things I've been pursuing for the last several years is free, entertainment for the kids, and been trying to find places for sledding hills. Don't know if it would be appropriate, but before we remove any hills anyplace, I would just ask that the consideration be taken whether or not it would be a suitable spot for families to use for winter entertainment. And if it's the hill, I believe, near the fire hall, it might be appropriate for that. And if so, I would just like that to be at least considered, before we're tearing the hills down. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan.
Ellen Sargent, 685 Erie Avenue. I'm here tonight as Planning Commission Chair, and this is our second reading of our text amendments and the creation of the new zoning districts. So I'm here if anything came up in the interim from the first reading, if you had any questions, if you had any concerns, to answer them, and hopefully this will be it tonight.
Thanks, Ellen. Anyone else wish to address the board? Seeing none, I will close public comment. We'll open up board member comment. Those members of the board wishing to make comment may do so at this time. Glenn?
Thank you. I went to a couple of the last board meetings. I went to the TAC meeting last week and the actual board meeting tonight for the library. And they had, I didn't quite get through the whole agenda, but pretty close this time. Usually their meetings run about 3 hours, so I don't think we should feel so bad. But they only meet once a month, too. They just, half a dozen points I wanted to just make you aware of. They were talking about the Marquette Township millage renewal in November, as well as the Powell Township, where will be the two that'll be on the ballot. They're going to start putting up yard signs, postcards, and doing mailings. Director Pam Christensen will be going to Powell Township to address some of their committees and their board. I don't know if she'll come here or not. Then they did have a closed session on financials, so that probably made the meeting run a little bit long, too. They're also in the process of going from 12 months to 15 months to 12 months in their budget with the city, because the city's changing theirs. So the library is going to be able to go back to 12 months. So they're trying to work that out, which will be next month. They'll have their budget meeting. They are working strongly on trying to save money for their constituents. They've changed credit card providers that have saved about 1/3 of their fees, and they're making substantial HVAC improvements to their building with air conditioning and heat. They're also looking at putting a committee of 3 together to make recommendations to the board on investments. They have some, I don't know if they're all endowments or just donations that once they get over $25,000, they've been recommended to have an investment portfolio put together. So they're going to form a committee to look at that. I got a couple questions for our manager on some of the things they're doing. They're also going to start classes probably in October for seniors who are interested in computer internet training. They've found through some discussion with Northern professors that psychologically it helps elderly people with decision-making and social interactions and those kinds of things to be more computer literate, whether it's working the computer or working on the internet, having Facebook pages, that kind of stuff. So they're going to start doing classes maybe like from 10 to 12 or 12 to 2, and they didn't really establish specific times or days. They thought maybe once a month. So that would be kind of interesting for the senior population in the county. And they're also considering a smoke-free campus. The board will probably discuss it at their October meeting. They're going to put out some flyers again and make some personal contacts and do some advertising and stuff to let the public know that they're considering it, because they've had lots of complaints. They're also going to do CPR training for their staff, and they're looking at having a contract with some type of collections manager to help them with getting some of their lost materials back, or contacting people who owe them money, whether it's fines or books or something like that. And they're going to look at pretty much a total webmaster conversion. They've got someone budgeted for next year 20 hours to really revamp their website. So it was a very full meeting. They're having a budget meeting September 30th to go through this new budget right now. And Planning Commission, the biggest thing we talked about was the issues that our chair brought up, and if we have questions on that later. Most of our meeting was discussion, the zoning text amendments and different things that we're going to be dealing with this fall and this spring. So that was a mouthful.
Thanks, Lynn. Anyone else? Pete?
I just attended the Marquette County Road Commission last night, and the road commission basically is standing in the background, waiting, trying to work in the background with the city of Marquette and the township, and it's up to the two identities, trying to work something out on this truck route, so there's not much they can do until the Marquette City and township can try to work something out, as Dennis and Randy was there also and made their case, so that's what all.
Secretary?
Yeah, I got my notice from the Secretary of State, email to, I think it was yesterday. Your last day to register to vote for the November election is Monday, October 6th. So you have to be in here by close of business that day if you want to vote in November.
Thank you. Anyone else? Treasurer Johnson?
Nothing.
Dan? Diana?
Nope.
First meeting since Duke LifePoint made an announcement of where they're going to locate their facility, and I wanted to make sure that we publicly, as a board, take the time to congratulate the city of Marquette as well as Duke LifePoint in finding a suitable location for the new hospital. We said it when we started that they came in and told us they would prefer to stay within the city limits. I think we had a great location for them if they wanted to come here, but they were able to meet their stated goal of staying within the city limits. We think it's fantastic. It's like we told the site developers the first time we sat down with them that we would do anything that we could do to help them, whether they located in the township or the city, because that's how important it is to have our residents be able to take advantage of high-quality health care close to home. So we're excited that they are going to move forward with the project, that they're going to make that kind of an investment, upwards of over $250 million investment in our community. And of course, Marquette Township will end up being a recipient for a lot of reasons. With new physicians coming into the area, we're a great place to live, and we certainly have some available residential sites out here. Also in the ancillary business and looking for available land with a great tax rate. Marquette Township's a great place to live, work, play, and locate a business. So congratulations, hats off to the city and Duke LifePoint for, I'm sure, with some tough negotiations over an extended period of time. And congratulations to everybody in the region of Marquette, because it's good for all of us. With that, I'll close board member comment. We'll move to, there is no first forum discussion this evening. We'll move to new business. Under 9A, consider the proposed zoning text amendments to the Marquette Township zoning ordinance articles. Clerk Rattari?
Yeah, board members have had this material since the first reading, which was 2 meetings ago. And if they had any questions or comments, I have not received any. So it's to the time now where we either approve it or do not. So I would like to make a motion to approve the zoning text amendment, Article 2 definitions, Article 3 zoning districts and maps, Article 14 principal uses permitting and districts, and Article 18 performance requirements, and it's the second reading, and this will be a roll call vote.
Support.
We have motion and support. Board member comment or discussion? Ernie?
One question. I talked to Ellen a little bit today, too. Question I have, has there been any changes to this since last time we talked about it?
No, not since first reading.
Not to my knowledge, and Jason had not indicated any changes.
Okay. Anyone else? We did not receive any other comments on it, Ellen, from the public, and so we had our first reading, we said 2 meetings ago. They've had over a month, and again, we don't see anyone questioning it here, so it will be a roll call vote. Clerk Rattari?
Clerk Rattari is yes. Trustee Durant?
Yes.
Trustee LaRue?
Yes?
Trustee Trescott?
Yes.
Trustee Pompo?
Yes.
Treasurer Johnson?
Yes.
And Supervisor Limata.
Yes.
Motion carries. The zoning text amendment is now changed.
Does it have to get published now, Clerk Rattari, or?
Yes. We'll publish it.
And will go into effect?
believe it's 30 days? Or is it
After
go-
publication.
15.
15?
7 and 15.
Okay.
Okay.
Good job.
So congratulations to the planning commission on a lot of really, really hard work. It's finally come to fruition. Now, here's some more projects. Get busy. Fantastic. That was going to be my next one, but thank you, Ellen. The next item on your agenda is 9B. Consider the 2014 tax rate request. This is done every year, as you're aware. It's our intent to collect millage as noted upon the tax rate request form. This report has to go to Marquette County, and what I'm looking for here is a motion to approve the submittal to Marquette County.
I move to submit this to the county.
Second.
Any board member comment or questions? Seeing none, we have a motion for board approval to submit the 2014 tax rate request form to the county. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion passes. Thank you. The next item on your agenda is 9C. Consider the fire rescue, safety, and security requests from the fire department. The first one is headlights, and Manager Gerard, if you will.
I did put these in the packet as a combined 3-item piece, rather than do separate memos on all of these things. Basically, the headlights, we have halogen headlights on the unit now that is dim. They don't provide enough light. And the chief is here to speak to these as well. Don't provide enough light in low light conditions, and they are proposing to go to the LED lights, which are available for that vehicle. The door locks, when the fire department moved from its old facilities to the new facilities, they removed the push-button door locks, the security locks that were at the old facility, and in a money-saving move in the construction, they have now worn out and they need to be replaced with similar locks. And on the hill removal, that is to provide additional room at the back of the fire hall for future expansion and for use and drainage to assist in those areas. It's too bad that Mr. Adamini left, but I see Dave is still here from the Recreation Committee, because if you do go forward with this, the material removed from that hill would be considered a township asset and would be moved over to Lions Field for fill, possibly to create a sledding hill. With that, turn it over to Chief.
Do you guys, I mean, Randy, you need a motion on these separately, though, right?
These are, yes, these are individual expenditures. The hill removal does exceed our authority, both the chief and I, to act independently, and that's one of the reasons I bundled these together.
And I did, for the board's edification, I did have a conversation with Manager Gerard in regards to the headlights and door locks, and that with the new spending authority, that these are the types of items that he can agree to move on without it coming to the board in the future. We did increase his spending authority so that he would be able to approve things of this nature, and he is aware of it, but I think it was just that with this particular item, because the three came in at the same time, he thought he would put it before us. It also gives the board opportunity to ask Chief Sims any questions if they so desire. Chief? Anyone wishing to ask Bob any questions? Pete?
On the headlights, why are we waiting till the end of the year to put the headlights on if they're so dim?
Well, we were looking at three different kinds. The HD and or HID headlights. They're a little bit less, but the bulbs don't last on rough roads. And considering that's all we have. And the replacement of the bulbs are $100 a piece. We had to wait until the FDIC conference down in Indianapolis, and I had some people checking on different lights, and they came up with the LED lights.
LEDs, if you're not familiar with LEDs, they don't have filaments in them. They're basically just a diode that exudes light, so they last on stronger.
We're just trying to find the best light we can get for a decent price. So it's just doing
I just wonder how often will we have dim lights on a fire truck, and then,
every time it's dark.
huh?
Every time it's dark.
Yeah, but usually if you're running with bright lights on.
Not all the time, you know.
If you're going down the road with your siren on, you don't have dim lights on, you could
Other
have bright
cars
lights.
coming, you do.
Oh, okay. It just seemed funny that why we wait a whole year in your budget for a whole year, and then all of a sudden, the end of the year, you know,
We're just trying to find out, you know, get the best light we could.
okay.
Any other questions? Ernie?
Just one on the removal of the hill. To me, question I have, when it was designed over there, did the architectural take that in consideration at that point in time, or they were using what information they had?
I'm assuming they were using the information they had. In the west side of the building, where the hill is cut back, on the north end, they didn't dig that out. We have standing water there, and that water has no place to drain, because going south, there's a rock ledge there. So we remove that hill, we can get that water to drain to the north and have better sight looking west on Venture Drive, and also we have more area for snow storage in the winter.
Yeah, there was discussion regarding this during the development stage, and the chief had indicated at that time that he would like to have that removed, but it was not something that got to, remember, this was a design-build process. We weren't designing it. So it's coming back now for consideration.
Other questions? Quinn?
So was there a plan for the hill? I mean, if you had addressed it, was it already there, and then when the
It just wasn't in the
plan was?
design build to have it removed.
Okay,
And
so
if
it was
we would've
already
had
there.
it done then, we would've had to pay the
Okay, so
percentage.
it wasn't a result of clearing and leveling and stuff?
No.
The hill was already there?
Yes.
And it has been something that the chief has talked about repeatedly, and we sat on it basically, quite honestly, while we were dealing with Duke Life Point, because had Duke Life Point located where they were, there was consideration for moving, acquiring additional land to the west of the fire hall for future expansion.
Well, that's what I was wondering too. Is this kind of a buffer then that you might want to leave for whatever business or people move in next to you?
It's on Venture Drive. When the driveway comes out of the back of the fire hall, it's right to the left of it. So it's, you know,
It's not the whole length of the back of the
no.
property?
No.
It's
Oh,
just that
okay.
one corner. If you look at it, it sticks out. And to address Mr. Anamini's, it's not really a good place to sleigh ride.
Out into the street?
It'd be right down into the street or in the parking lot, and
Yeah. Any of that activity around emergency building is not a good activity.
Right,
it's not really that big.
okay. Pete?
Were we talking about maybe in the future acquiring that land behind it for future
Yes,
use?
still behind, you know, to the west of the building
Yeah.
itself, yes.
Would it be better to use that money for something else and then wait a little bit longer than,
Well, the biggest thing's gonna be for the site distance, going up Venture Drive, and a place to put snow in the wintertime.
well, the snow was designed to push it all to the south, and that's why the pond was on. That was the argument, to put the building there so all the drainage and the snow would go to the south where the pond is.
There's a lot of snow there, Pete.
No, I know
half our
that, but that's,
driveway.
the whole design was designed for it to run down that way.
Well, and the biggest thing is get that water to run out of there.
Yeah.
You know, we have standing water there, and eventually it's gonna come underneath the blacktop.
Well, the
and-
more area you make for snow, the more water and snow you're gonna have there too.
But if you put the drainage in correctly and drain
Yeah.
it towards the north to the ditch, then it
Mhm.
will run off. Right now, water comes out of that hill, and at the base of that hill, there's standing water all summer long.
I just think they're better use for the money, that's all, rather than spend it and moving that hill right now.
Other questions for Bob? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion first for approval of the purchase of the new LED headlights, and I think the request was for $1,592 plus shipping. Correct.
So moved.
Support.
Motion and support. If there's no other comment, all those in favor? Those opposed? That motion passes. I'd also entertain a motion for the replacement door locks for the fire hall. I believe that amount was $1,170.
So moved.
Support.
If there's no other questions, all those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? That motion passes. And third and finally, the request was for awarding the low bidder in the amount of $5,252 for the hill removal. I would entertain a motion for that as well.
Support.
Take the motion first. Thank you.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and support. Board member, if there's no other comment, all those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed?
Aye.
That motion passes.
I'm just getting ahead.
Thank you.
Chief Sims.
Yep.
You could've-
The next item on your agenda, the new 10D, is consider the request from Northern Clearing. And that has to do with the, is it the gas line, Randy?
That's correct. This is a company that's been retained by the gas company to clear the brush from around the gas transmission line and its right-of-way. The fire department basically backs these folks up and supports them if there's any kind of fire activity out there. One of the aspects, and we really don't have any major issue with that part of it, with the mechanical clearing, but they are talking in the second phase of this about applying herbicide. Part of that right-of-way runs through our wellhead protection area, and I do have an email that came from our water operator indicating that he would not support, and I believe Kirk Page is here also, would not support application of herbicides in that area, so we would not be agreeing to that as the recommendation.
You can see that their letter, they do state that the herbicide applied would be approved by Northern Natural Gas and applied by licensed applicators, and they are asking for us to return the enclosed postcard. Without our return, does that automatically notify them that we're against the herbicide application, or do we have to take further action to notify them that we do not wish to have anything put there because it is a environmentally sensitive area with a wellhead protection area?
If the board agrees that that would not be a good idea to do, we would follow it up with a letter with a map attached. They could apply the herbicides in other areas, but not in the area of the wellhead protection area.
Then I think my recommendation on the motion then would be that we make a motion to have staff send a communication out to Northern Natural Gas and let them know of our objection to any applications of herbicide and include a map of the wellhead protection area in that area. So if someone would care to make
I'll
that
make that motion.
motion, that would be great.
Support.
A motion and support, board member comment?
When reading this literature, they said that it will be applied with approval by the Northern Natural Gas and by licensed applicators. Well, here again, you have to have someone other than the individual who's going to benefit from this making the approval, and that's what it amounts to. And I'm concerned with that when the ones that want to do it is approving it too, so.
That's typically the way they do it. The issue comes in where we have a separate overlay district for the wellhead protection area that we absolutely control, and nothing is going to get applied in that area that could conceivably get through the ground and into the water supply. Kirk, did you have any comments you wanted to make?
Yeah, I'll just make a brief comment. To apply herbicides in this situation, it's a legal requirement to obtain permission from the property owner, so they have to ask permission. And secondly, I mean, they're only proposing it as a cost savings. Obviously, it's cheaper to spray herbicides than it is to hire somebody to physically remove vegetation, so.
Okay. Other questions? Seeing none, we have a motion and a second before you to direct staff to send a reply back to Northern Natural Gas with our opposition to application of any herbicides in that area, including the map. If all those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? That
Okay.
motion passes.
We will go ahead and do that, and you will see a copy of that in your next packet as a communication.
Thank you. The next item on your agenda is the new 10E, consider Trowbridge Park Low Pressure Force Main Project, Phase 2. You have a number of transmittals included in your packet. The first one from Superintendent Page to discuss the last May, the Township Board awarded the construction contract for the Trowbridge Park Phase 2 Low Pressure Force Main Extension Project to Overstar for a total cost of $217,772. The project should be substantially complete by the end of the month. Right now, 2 blocks are complete and available for use. In response to additional on-site septic system issues and connection demand, the project area has been increased by approximately 2.5 blocks. Due to shallow bedrock and stream crossings, which prevented horizontal drilling operations, we have had to reroute and insulate some main. We have received $15,780.50 in connection permit fees and lateral benefit charges to date. Attached are pay request number 1 from Overstar and a recommendation from North Country Engineering to pay Overstar $189,312.20. Kirk concurs and does make that request for the board to make that approval for contractors pay request number 1. Board questions? Anything? Superintendent
what we-
Page, you
what-
may want to stay up at the podium.
This is what we've already approved in the past.
Correct.
Move forward on this.
Yep.
The only thing that has changed a lot is they've added 2.5 blocks because of the demand in that. And then with the bedrock that was not known, and the question I have is, did they do any drilling at that point in time, to give them any background information when they start the digging?
No, we utilized, there were borings done back in the early 70s for the water main, which is on the other side of the street. So obviously, it's on the other side of the street, so. And also, in the 70s, the borings were spaced out more than we would do it today. Today, we do them closer together, and if you encounter bedrock, you go ahead so many feet, and behind so many feet, and it's just more precise today. But, it is an added cost to do that, and if we had nothing, we probably would have done that. But, and it hasn't been that great. I mean, basically, it's just been so far one area.
And the last question I have is, you've already had some connection permits. Do you anticipate some more coming up within the next year?
Oh, yeah, absolutely, yeah,
They'll all go against the actual total cost of the project?
correct, yep. Now, we are, as you recall, offering financing for both the connection fee and the lateral benefit charge. But actually, 2 people, or 2 families have already paid the entire cost up front. So.
Great. Other questions? Lynn?
Kirk, I'm wondering how deep this is going to be, and the insulation, it was brought up a little bit in this, as far as insulating the pipes and stuff. Obviously, you're already being proactive on everything with the last year's freeze.
Yeah, actually, as I mentioned prior to getting your approval, we have changed a couple of things in the design of this project. One was changing the material to HDPE, which is, that can be drilled, horizontally drilled. And so normally there's less surface disruption. In this case, we have had to, install some valves that ended up being in intersections, so there has been some pavement, obviously. We're also making it deeper. It's like 8 feet deep, as opposed, previously they were like 6.5 feet deep. So now it's a minimum of 8 feet deep. And I believe there's one of the change orders, or change order includes the insulation part, but it was anticipated that when the project is bid, you have a list of unit prices for materials anticipated to be used in the project. So basically, those quantities might change because it's estimated. So instead of 100 feet of pipe, you might put in 120 feet of pipe. But what we did not have is, because it was anticipated it would be 8 feet deep, it would not be insulated. So we did encounter a rock knob, basically. And I'm actually jumping ahead to the change order, but And the rock knob, of course, was between houses we had to serve and the main that we were trying to build to the north. And we just couldn't make it. Basically, it came up to a point and it was so close to the surface that we couldn't even insulate. It would have required more insulation than there was ground cover. So we ended up basically changing directions, going to the south to connect to a previous project. And as I said, insulation was not in the contract, so the change order includes a price for insulation.
So you went deeper and you did insulate that
Right,
part.
if we couldn't get as deep
That's
as
why
we
I thought I read it.
anticipated,
I wasn't sure.
You
Okay,
know,
thanks.
it's insulated, so.
Other questions? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to approve payment to Overstar Inc. in the amount of $189,312.20.
So moved.
Support.
We have motion and support for contractor's pay request number 1. Any other board member comment? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion passes. Next item on your agenda is the change order that Superintendent Page referred to just a couple of minutes ago. Let me scroll down to that. Transmittal in your packet was dated September 11th. Regards a change order recommended by North Country Engineering and accepted by Overstar. The purpose of the change order is to adjust the contract amount to include unit prices for items not included in the original contract. As alluded to on Van Boom Avenue, shallow bedrock was encountered, and he just described what was required there. There was also a stream crossing required to connect to Phase 1. Because of the permit to drill under the stream would have taken weeks, they had to open cut the road and shift like he had just alluded to as well. The connection point for Phase 1 had a cleanout which is required on the end of mains. Instead of paying for new cleanout at the dead end, we relocated the existing cleanout in Phase 1. There was no unit price for relocating cleanouts. And the contract had unit pricing for topsoil and sod. It was decided to replace sod with seed at a savings of $3.65 per square yard. The change order resulted in an amount of, wish I could remember. Thank you.
An increase of $9,396.
And, oh, there it is. An increase of $93.96. Any board member questions for Kirk on the change order request? Ready?
On the seating, rather than sod, the seating that they did in my place when they had to redo everything after the freeze up, it really came through as the grass came up real good. They put that plastic on the top of the hole down the straw on that, and it really worked. It really grew. So
Yeah, it
I was
actually.
very surprised.
It actually turned out to be a pretty good year for seed.
There's no
And
other
this was a
question.
case where, we originally, and we kind of do this as a standard thing, just automatically call for sod just because it's generally easier. I mean, it's got to be watered, of course, but in this case, it would really kind of stand out, if we put, because we're only restoring up to property line. So, you'd have this nice sod right next to just kind of normal spotty grass, so. And it was a cost savings, so.
Okay. If there's no other questions, we would need a motion to approve the change order number 1 to the contract in the amount of $9,396.
So moved.
Support.
Motion and support. If there's no other questions, all those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? That passes. The next item on your agenda is E3, the North Country Engineering Inc. contract amendment. You do have a transmittal dated September 11th from Superintendent Page. Talk about the contract and amendment, and also the next agenda item, E4, the invoice from North Country Engineering. The contract amendment is for additional services provided beyond the scope of work in the original professional services agreement dated May 13th for $15,225. And the amendment is requesting an additional $14,287.50. The invoice, which is the next agenda item, is for services provided from August 14th through the 18th. That amount is $24,335. We'll have to deal with the contract amendment and then the invoice. So if we just keep our questions to the contract amendment at this point, And Superintendent Page, anything to add?
Well, the engineer does have a pretty detailed, itemized explanation of the extra services, but basically, I am here to certify basically that there was a lot of extra work outside the original scope performed. So it is a legitimate claim.
I would, if there's any board member questions, Lynn?
Just a comment, I guess. Since your memos and backup are extremely thorough, I can see why you wouldn't have filled out the request for payment to the board, but I would really like to know the account numbers that these are coming from and how you're gonna account for them.
Well, I filled out that request initially for this project. So
But
all
this
these,
is the extra.
all these costs are still going to the same project.
Okay, thank you.
It's just changing the
The amounts.
Dollar
amounts, yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions? Seeing none, would entertain a motion to allow Kirk to execute the contract amendment with North Country Engineering.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second. If there's no other comment, all those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion passes. The next item would be to, would entertain a motion to approve the change in the invoice dollar amount for North Country Engineering. And the amount is $24,335.
So moved.
Support.
Motion and support. Board member comment on the invoice for services. Seeing none, we have a motion and a second to approve the invoice in the amount of $24,335. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? That motion passes. Thank you.
I have a question.
Sure, Ernie.
I have a question for Kurt. What's the status of the project as it stands right now?
Well, like I said, it should be complete by the end of the year. It has been, there've been a lot of problems and a lot of jumping around. Even though we've only got a couple blocks, or I think 3 blocks that are actually complete right now and ready for use. There's been a subcontractor involved, the actual pipe drilling contractor. And also a number of people using or want to use our contractor to do their hookup. So there's been, it's still within the completion date. And I hate to, give definite dates, but like I said, it should be complete by the end of this month, so.
Providing the weather holds.
Yeah, and there has been bad weather. The areas, even though it's been directionally drilled, we have to install valves which are in structures. And we've got relief valves, and we got shut-off valves, we've got cleanouts. And those are actually installed on the pipe, so, even though the majority of the pipeline is drilled, we have to dig it up. Oh, we also have to drill it up to put the Ys which is the tap, for the services. So there has been a lot of excavation involved, less than, normally it'd be 100% excavated. So now it's only like maybe 80% excavated. But there have been some pretty wet areas that have been made even worse by the weather. I mean, it's wet to start with. You got a mud hole, and then it rains like crazy. So there have been a number of days where there's been no work done. So a couple of other things happened. The very first block, it was going to be drilled, but you try to, and they're crossing existing water services. Okay, and it's pretty difficult to precisely determine from electronic measurements the depth of a pipe. There's no utility that's going to tell you how deep something is, even though they can kind of see what it should be according to the readouts. So what they did is they on the water service, they would actually dig it up, or actually drop a valve key on the shutoff, or dig it up to see, how deep the water service is, so that they can gauge the depth of their drilling. But a couple of cases where the shutoff was maybe 7 feet deep, okay? But the service line was actually deeper than shut off. So there were two cases where the water service and the sewer main were in the exact same depth. So there were like 2 breaks of water service lines, which again, you know, you gotta shut down. It's more water you gotta deal with. You gotta make the repairs, start up again. So, you know, those types of things happen. I mean, overall, it's been a great project, and it's, you know, I think our decision to make changes to the design is going to be a good one, long term. Another good thing has been, you know, the response from the residents. You know, these additions we've had. I mean, we're out there working, and people would just literally walk up to us and say, "Well, I'm just right over here. Can you? And I need you. I need the service." So, you know, and that's kind of the whole point of the project, to provide service. So, you know, I mean, at one point we did have to stop, you know, but as late as, you know, it's been less than a month that we actually stopped extending, you know, because we had to draw the line somewhere, you know, because we were running out of time, basically. But the only other comment I'd have is, normally in most projects, you know, we would have both a contractor's and an engineer's pay request earlier in the project. Normally, we try to do it like monthly, but everybody's been so busy that what happened basically was the contractor's company owner said, you know, I got to get some revenue coming in here. You know, he had a lot of expenses, so that's basically what happened.
Thank you, Kurt. The next item on your agenda is item number 9F, Manager's Report. And you do have a copy from dated 9/11 from Manager Gerard. Randy?
Just a couple of quick comments. First of all, I'm presuming we'll be dealing with the first item later this evening under the forum when we're talking about the budget. We'll set potentially some work dates. The local road rehab plan, tomorrow is our 4th meeting, public meeting. So far, the participation has been very light. Dave Wiegand is here if you have any questions for him, but we've only had a handful of residents come in to take a look at it. Now, along those lines, we have published it quite widely. We've sent it out with the utility bills. We've sent it out on e-blast, all the email addresses that we have. It's been talked about here at the board meeting now 4 or 5 times. We've had quite a few people come in, pick out the hand-up material, but not actually come to the public session. So that's either a really good thing or a really bad thing. We don't know at this point. So the 4th one is tomorrow. Here in the boardroom. Street lighting project, the portion at North Star Academy is completed. What they were doing is waiting for the LED lights to come in. We are replacing all of our lights with the LEDs. The 4 were placed Friday at North Star Academy, around North Star Academy. The remainder of the remaining 16 lights that we have budgeted for this year will be installed. We expect to have the plan from BLP yet this week, actually. And they will be replacing some of the Durastars that are already up. Eventually, all the Durastars will be replaced with LEDs. And you'll see in the budget that we also have money budgeted for next year to finish the urban residential area with all LED lighting. Parking lot extension, we are right now waiting for the poles for the lights to come in for the 2 additional lights on the extended parking lot. I expect that those should be completed within the next 2 weeks. They will be doing that, and Meisters will be completing the irrigation at the same time. They're going to be sharing a trench when they run the lines. Corridor Committee, the minutes are attached from the August 12th meeting. And I will just make one quick comment. Treasurer Johnson had raised the question about why we're not getting any support for our winter freeze activities. And I will give you a full report in the next meeting. Kirk and I will put a report together for you, but in a very brief format. What happened was the governor made the emergency declaration for the state and turned it over to the control of Michigan State Police Emergency Management Division. He also decreed that they would make their decisions predicated upon the regulations and requirements of the Community Development Block Grant Program. And that program has basically 5 primary requirements to it to be eligible. 3 of those we do not qualify for. They are designed specifically for cities. They deal with population density, they deal with budgetability for levying millage, and they deal with a traditional downtown having existed for a period of time. So 3 out of the 5, no township can qualify for up here. So none of us got any money. I did challenge the governor's office on that, and that will be part of what you see. Got no response.
There is, however, another avenue.
There is another avenue called Section 19. We are in the process of doing that. However, that is limited to $100,000.
Randy?
Yes.
Did you do anything with MTA? Would they be able to kind of fight for us, or they have a comment, or don't want to get
Good one.
involved?
No. MTA,
Not enough townships.
MTA was copied on my letter to the governor, and no response. From MTA's standpoint, however, the larger, the larger townships downstate do have arguably a traditional downtown, and they did qualify. But there's no township in the UP that has a traditional downtown, so none of us qualified in the affected counties.
Randy, could you also speak to the sale of the former township hall and where we're at?
Well, right now, we are almost 7 years into the process with the same potential purchaser. Not a whole lot I can say right at this point, but we are right now pending a court decision. To wrap it up, Roger Zappa, our civil counsel, has revised the purchase agreement, and I expect that we'll have that signed here within the next day or so with the revision. And basically what that does is ties to an October 7th anticipated court date.
But we do have a updated agreement as of yesterday afternoon at about 3 o'clock.
Correct.
Thank
The
you.
reason I say we're at year 7 is basically this goes all the way back to when we had the first plan that was approved that was then halted. These are the same purchasers that were in the mix at that time. So,
If anyone would care to see a copy of the purchase agreement while it's still confidential and not publicly available, I would be happy to provide you with a copy immediately after this meeting to review.
or if anybody would like to come and sit with me for a few minutes, we can run through where we're at and what the rationale is as to why I'm waiting.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Ernie?
Have we got everything out of the buildings over there at this point in time?
The only thing that remains in the township hall are the items that we are going to make available to other townships, and basically that's your former board table, a few chairs and tables, the old folding tables, and some metal chairs, the folding chairs. The audio system is also going to be offered to other townships, but otherwise the building's vacant. I
Isn't it-
believe Public Works is now vacant as well, in the garage. Is that still vacant?
Yes, although we have some stuff outside.
Okay.
The, just as an off-side comment at the road commission meeting last night, they may be interested in the board table.
That was one of my thoughts.
We should make it available for them if they're interested.
I mean, possibly the PA system as well.
Other questions for Manager Gerard? Lynn?
One of the things we did talk about at the last planning meeting was the road outside here on Commerce.
Mhm.
I've gotten lots of comments from people who are not happy with the way it turned out. They're waiting for it to be finished, is what I'm hearing. So we did
Yep.
talk about that as far as ordinances and who controls that, and the fact that the road commission has the control of the roads, and so
Well,
I
that-
just want your
that-
take on it, basically.
That is the chip seal process, and we did this, we wanted to do this out here as kind of a demonstration for what chip seal is, basically. It is the same process. If any of you have traveled the back, what used to be the back entrance into K.I. Sawyer, M94, where it goes from US 41 south of Scandia, it goes to the back entrance of Sawyer. That's a chip seal road. They did that, chip seal. I think the thing that we discovered with this, and Dave and I have talked briefly about it, is where we're going to be looking at chip seal. I think the real issue here is that they didn't do any wedging under it. They simply did the chip seal over top of the road as it existed. So down near Grand Champ McBride, there's a small divot across the road. I don't know whether that's a drainage conduit or whatever, but there's a dip there. Up near the mall entrance, there are a couple of areas where it doesn't fill holes, basically. What it does is preserves the surface of the road as it currently is. Grove Street was a chip seal. So what we'll be doing now, I think we've modified our approach a little bit on some of these roads, was we may do some wedging first to fix some of those surface areas before they do the chip seal in those areas where chip seal is going to be applied. But that is the finish. It does hold up. I mean, it looks rough, and I've had people ask me, well, when does the gravel come off? It doesn't. I mean, M94 has been plowed now for almost 4 years, and it's just like it was when it was put down. Grove Street's the same way. They did Grove Street, what, 2 years ago? I think it was 2 years ago, the chip seal. But again, they did the same thing on Grove Street. They simply did the first layer just right over the top of the surface with no prep work on it. And that's what you see. I mean, you feel all the bumps that were there before. It's just water's not getting into them now to make them worse. So I think what we'll be looking at doing is doing some prep work prior to. And remember, this will be our project. We will be managing the project as we go forward. With the road project, we did not manage this one.
Any other questions for Manager Gerard before we close the manager's report, Pete?
The lighting for Commerce, we have to start looking into that. Wiring's
Everything's there. The wiring, everything is there. All that we need to do is come up with the money to do the poles and the lights. Now, I mean, we have not talked about that. It actually falls within the DDA. Ellen left now. That actually falls within the DDA. So there is a possibility that the DDA may have some funding available to be able to add that. But we have not discussed that with Board of Light and Power.
Anything
It would
else,
be a
Pete?
good LED project.
Oh, I just wanted to, no, that's it.
Mhm.
Ernie?
To follow up on what Randy said, on the DDA, when they put the road in, paid for everything was underground with the lighting on Commerce and Venture Drive.
Correct.
Wiring was all there. I wanted to put lights in at the time. I was overruled. They didn't want to do it. They said whoever builds there can do it.
Well, and that
What
was the theory, and realistically, then the property was all privately held. So they're the developers. So there may be some joint activity. There are several projects that are currently in the works in this area, so some of that may come to fruition.
Any other questions? Seeing none, we'll close the manager's report. We will move to the second public comment. Anyone wishing to make public comment may do so at this time. Seeing none, I will close public comment, move to additional comments from board members. Diana, anything? Dan? Ernie? Randy?
Yeah, we're currently, we're going to have, hopefully in early October, a ZBA meeting, get that organizational stuff done and get that bylaws approved within the ZBA. So we are working on it, just schedules have not meshed yet.
Thank you. Lynn?
No, thanks.
Peter?
Just to remind everybody that the road committee and Jason's here every Monday and Wednesday. Mondays are from noon to 1, Wednesday from 6 o'clock to 7 o'clock to answer any question on the road millage. So if you have any questions, stop by. We'll take care of your questions. Thank you.
The only comment I may have briefly is that you saw some things in the local media recently about the next development zone and the desire of the city of Marquette and the city of Escanaba for surrounding municipalities to approve an intergovernmental cooperative agreement, basically signing on to the concept of, it's an arm of the Michigan Economic Development Corporation. It will be, if approved, a corporation. They wanted all of us to present it before our boards, requesting that we would approve it and move it forward to them before the end of the month so they could submit all this to the governor's office. I did not put it on the agenda, however, because it was received last week with this urgency to get it done. I was loath to put it before the board without having a legal opinion, because when I read through the intergovernmental cooperative agreement, I had some concerns, as did Manager Gerard, in regards to whether there was any potential for a tax capture. And there is some language in there about a TIF, and my concern, and we wanted legal to review it beforehand, was that you could bring in some new development into your community, which would then be recognized as a portion of that corporation, and there could be some tax capture. And in the language, contrary to what you may have read in the media, we could potentially be liable to give up some of our tax revenue towards that economic development corporation. And I got that information late last night from municipal council, and based upon the information that I received from him, I wasn't prepared to throw that on the agenda as a last-minute item before the board would have had any opportunity whatsoever to be comfortable with that information. So I held it off purposely. You may have read that some other competing municipalities may have approved it. I also know some others that agreed to put a resolution of support, that they supported in concept, but do not want to be voting participants or members of it. Our municipal council believes that no action is the best action, but that if we wanted to take an action, that we could certainly pass a resolution of support for the conceptual idea of a next development zone. But certainly he doesn't believe that we should sign the interlocal governmental cooperative agreement and move forward with it. I will provide all that information in written format before the next meeting, and we'll see if the board is interested in moving it forward. That having been said, we'll close board member comment. Before we move into that forum discussion for the budget work session, I would ask the board that we just have a quick 5-minute recess, and then we'll come back and pick up in the forum discussion for the budget work session of 2015.
I move to
Thank you.
take a 5-minute recess.
Or,
All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed?
Meeting's in recess at 8 o'clock.
We'll adjourn at 8, be back together at 8:05. The meeting is now back in session, and we are moving forward on to the forum discussion for 2015 annual budget. The purpose of tonight is to do a complete overview just of the budget process, where we are, where we're heading. You guys all got my transmittal asking board members to set up individual opportunities to get some conversations in with, the whole process that I'm hoping to achieve by doing that is that we can speed up the process. You guys have heard me say it before, 14 meetings, 16 meetings. I believe that we can get through it in much better use of our time. And what I would request that each individual board member takes the opportunity to make some office time to sit down with Manager Gerard, myself, or any of the department heads and ask some specific questions if you're uncomfortable with anything that you see in the budget, or to get a better understanding of something that may be you're seeing something that looks new from prior years. When I say it's the same budget as we've had in the past, basically is the same budget. I mean, there's some slight variations clearly because we've moved to new facilities, made some adjustments there. But tonight is about going through the overall process, and then at the end of that, we are going to have to select some budget sessions for the, at least for the next few weeks, or at least up until the next meeting time. I would request that we at least fill in a couple of dates between before our next scheduled meeting. So with that, I'm going to have Manager Gerard take us on a walk through the budget process before you. Randy?
Okay, basically, we compressed the budget process in the departments this year. The budget materials went out to the department heads on July 25th.
Turn your mic on too, Randy.
Using it for the calculator. Okay. Went out July 25th to the departments. They had until August 8th to get their budgets put back together and get them back into me. I had until the 13th through the 20th to have budget sessions, which we did. I met with all the departments to talk about their budgets. What I informed the department heads when we had the budget sessions, and actually when the materials were transmitted in July, that I wanted to present for you a best-case scenario and a worst-case scenario with regard to the tax tribunal cases. So as you look at your through your budget materials, when you get to the department requests, the department request column reflects as if nothing changes. What we would expect to get for tax revenues are reflected there, and the department's requests are predicated upon that basis. Under my recommendation, I'm making a recommendation as though the revenues are reduced by not being successful in Supreme Court, and the 12 big boxes that we currently have are calculated at the revenues that they would be at would that happen. So on my side, you're going to see the revenues are substantially less, and I've adjusted my budget recommendations to reflect that as well. So you have, as you go down these columns, you have best case scenario and worst case scenario. Likely we're going to come someplace in between there, and we'll have to modify the budget or amend the budget if and when the Supreme Court acts. I doubt that will be this budget year. 2014, it'll probably be into 2015 before they actually take it up, if they take it up. And we don't know that they will as yet. So the budget was distributed out to the board members on September 2nd. I sent it out electronically. I put hard copies at that time of the budget document itself in your mailboxes, and then it was followed by these booklets at the meeting on September 7th, the complete booklets. They're laid out in the same format that they've been laid out in prior years. Each department has a separate tab. It provides historical information for you. It provides millage information. It provides just all the information that Lois and I thought that you could use in going through the budgets and looking at developing trends and identifying where we may be going. I think the biggest thing that you're going to see is the variations between what the impact of the tax tribunal may have in terms of our bottom line. In my transmittal memo to you, I indicated that it would be roughly between $33,000 and $177,000, depending upon what the indication is. At that point, the department heads were informed that were we to get there, that they could certainly come back to the board with a request for amendments of the budget. We are still bound, even though we have the Supreme Court case pending, we are still bound by the regular budget calendar, where we have to have our public hearing by a fixed date, and it has to be adopted by the 31st of December. So I have developed a part of a piece of a calendar other than your budget work session dates. Also, the tax information that you voted on tonight to send to the clerk or to the treasurer, county treasurer, will be coming back to you as part of the budget adoption process. That's the tax truth and taxation portion of the budget adoption. We typically do those at the same time after the public hearing, the final public hearing. So I guess what I'd like to do is maybe start right off, if you have any questions that we could get out of the way first before we jump into the budget, any general questions that board members have. And I've met with Trustee LaRue and with Treasurer Johnson, with Clerk Rattari and Supervisor Limata. But are there any general questions before we get started? No? Okay. Well, as Supervisor Lehman mentioned, the budget that's before you is essentially 2014's budget, slightly modified to address some of the changes that are being thrust upon us. The primary change that's being thrust upon us is, as of January 1st, National Health Care, the Affordable Care Act, requires that prescriptions be included in the insured health insurance plan, that they no longer be self-funded programs or any other type of programs. That's causing an 18% increase in our health insurance plan all by itself. That's simple fact. So you will see the impact of that as you go through in all of the departments. I guess a couple of the other primary things, I covered most of them in my transmittal. I've reduced, and again, presuming that we're not going to be successful at the Supreme Court level, or legislative action will occur by the end of the year that will address the question for us. providing funding in the budget, my recommendation is for 2 board members and the supervisor to attend the annual MTA meeting, as opposed to all 7, basically as a cost measure. I am recommending a couple of items I'll just throw out there now. They're later in the budget, but with all of the discussion that's been going on and with the issues that have been happening with law enforcement and fraud, I am recommending that you consider going back to 80 hours a week for the law enforcement. I have talked with the Sheriff's Department. Our cost is not going to increase this year. We do not have a vehicle to purchase this year. We will in 2016, but not in 2015. So looking at increasing that, it's not a huge increase to the budget, but it's something for the board to consider. You've talked about it, so I wanted to put it in the budget so you can at least consider it and see what the impact of that would be.
Go ahead.
Just when you're on law enforcement, you talked about the sheriff agreeable to provide retail fraud services.
Yes.
Can you explain what that's about?
When Sheriff Lovelace was here, when he came and spoke with you when we were dealing with the retail fraud question several months ago, he indicated that he would be willing to initiate a program using the police academy, the upper level police academy graduate, not the graduates, but those about to graduate, to serve in as his special deputies, to serve in some of the retail stores, to take our deputy out of the mix so our deputy would not be called off of patrol.
Who would be paying for that then?
That would be part of the sheriff's department. And he would bill, the sheriff has indicated that he would be billing the retail establishments for that. Minimal cost. There would be, they would not be armed, they would not be full deputies, they would be limited deputies, but they would be able to hold the perpetrators, per se, on site until the regular patrol deputy could get there, not ours. Our deputy would not be called off patrol.
Was there any kind of a value limit that he was considering with that? Because
That would be up to the sheriff. The sheriff was taking a position that it was not going to be minimal amounts, it was not going to be packs of gum. They can provide their own loss prevention for those types of things, but if it was serious retail fraud, like he spoke when he was here, where the people were going out with, large scale items, that would be something that they would be looking at. But it wouldn't be 24/7. It would be certain times that he would provide that coverage. They would have to provide some coverage as well. But the key element there is that he recognizes and understands that we want our deputy patrolling. We don't want them sitting in stores, and we don't want them, running down with shoplifters to process for the rest of the shift. So the whole intent was to keep them on the road here in the township.
Some malls set different amounts. Some go 25, some 50, some 100 before they call, so that's something that he has to do.
Travel and conference, we are anticipating that there will be additional filings with the tax tribunal outside the arena of the big boxes. We're seeing it happen in other places. We are in the process of working with some, so there is funding in general services as well as in professional services to accommodate having to do appraisals and having to have legal review and to provide for some professional witnesses at hearing. So there are some funds there, not anywhere near what we have had in the past, but some funds to cushion that.
Other general questions?
Say again?
Is there any other general questions while we're?
Under under capital, as you'll see under capital 903, what I'm looking at is my transmittal, my general fund transmittal. Capital 903 under account 299, I do have $15,000 built in there, and that is the continuation of the lighting project in urban residential area to provide lighting where lighting currently is not in place, and to replace the Durastars with LEDs to brighten the light. We will also be working with the BLP to remove some of the foliage that's blocking some of the lights. We have tree limbs and other things that are growing that are blocking some of the light that is there. Under appropriations, I'm continuing $2,500 for the community garden, which has not been able to get off the ground as yet. $3,000 for township beautification, which is basically the maintenance of the flower beds and the signage. We do have funding from MDOT for corridor reconfiguration in 2018-19. So we're not going to put money into much in the corridor this year, in the corridor itself, other than keeping it mowed, which we are working on doing that. And $8,000, we are budgeting money this year for community events. Has not had a specific budgeted amount in previous years. We've been covering it generally out of the general fund balance. This year I've put $8,000 in for the activities that they do, the three primary activities that they do. Mainly for the advertising, which is where most of the cost has come from. Soil and water conservation, we historically have given them $2,000 a year for the work that they do within the township for soil and water conservation with the streams and with development. In 4th of July Corporation, we are continuing at the $1,000 that we gave them last year. Also under law enforcement, I'm also continuing the $1,000 contribution to Upset.
I noticed you're changing account numbers. Is there a reason for that?
Which accounts? Library?
That might have been one of them, the planning I noticed.
Yeah, library services have been taken out of the general fund budget and set up as a separate line item because it's basically a pass-through. It's not a revenue item for the general fund. So Lois did set it up as a separate in and out account on its own, similar to the Metro Authority and liquor law, things such as that. So you'll see those separately, but it does not figure in the revenue stream for general fund. Under planning,
Yeah, repair and maintenance was one of them.
say again,
Repair and maintenance. was one of
under
them.
planning,
Yeah.
Lois, did Jason work with you on that? I wasn't aware that he changed any of the account numbers.
Well, it even says on here, formally, I should have put sticky notes on here or something.
Oh, treasury changed?
Oh.
Okay. So that was actually a change
Maybe
that
I'll
you did
get
when you
that
put the
too.
budget together. Okay.
Yeah, 722 ZBA says was 410.
Oh, okay.
Just didn't know what the.
So you're looking on the actual budget sheets themselves?
Yeah.
Okay.
Not the transmittal part.
Yeah, okay, it was 400, 721, that's the change that Treasury did. In terms of dollars there, we've maintained the $3,500 contribution for a grant match that we typically do under miscellaneous.
Didn't mean to throw you off your game.
Oh, no,
there
no,
for-
that's fine.
For following the flow, the flow.
Do we put anything in for, like weed control, Randy? I talked to the county, the other night, and they're not allowed to use any weed control.
No, they can't. The DEQ is stepping in to deal with a lot of that because of the roadside. What we've been doing is we've been using soil and conservation, and typically when we've done the weed control, it's been for something like specific, like spotted knapweed, where we would identify an area, like in Trowbridge, we had a couple of 2 years ago, we had a few vacant lots that were overrun with that spotted knapweed. It's the stuff that has the purple flower that comes out on it. And you have to take it out by the roots, to get it out. And what we've done is through the Soil and Water Conservation, they have worked with Sundara House generally to have the handicapped kids come and we pay them basically by the root.
I'm just looking at,
So
like,
much a root
on
out of
the
the
roads that
general
we've
fund.
done already, something between the sidewalk and the curb, there's weeds coming up and I just.
Well, the road project, along with Complete Streets, is going to address some of that, because where we're putting pathways in, that will be green grass, and, that'll be taken up, and
Yeah.
it'll be grass, and then on the inside, I guess you'd have to call it on the outside of the pathway itself would be swales. There would be designed swales that would be in there, so some of that will be taken care of in the road project.
Well, we're talking about ordinances too. That's
Yeah.
one of our
Yeah.
things on our post-it
I just wonder if
note.
there's something we can do when we do this road project to stop the weeds from coming up underneath there, because if we're using Warner Street as an example, and then you see the weeds coming up a little bit, and just sort of bothers you that.
No, the issue that I'll caution you on with regard to talking about ordinances, because if you pass an ordinance, you have to be in position to be able to enforce the ordinance, because otherwise it's useless.
Talk about junk cars and
Yeah.
and weeds and
Yep.
grass height and everything.
Now, we did,
Talk some more.
there is a file on noxious weeds, because we did, it's gotta be probably 6 years ago now, at least, started working on a noxious weed ordinance, and it was so cumbersome that it just never went anywhere. How do you policing it was really, well, when you get the list, basically, of what invasive species include, it's almost everything that's growing now. There's very little that's not an invasive species, so it was just such a large scope that there was just no way to get our arms around it. So we were trying to rely on outside agencies like the Soil and Water Conservation District, and they were trying to do what they could through education, and we had hosted, at the old hall, we had hosted several educational
Pictures of it
sessions.
and stuff like
Yeah.
that up there, but never went anywhere.
It's difficult, it's very hard.
But it's making people responsible too for their yards and the vacant lots and stuff.
Well, that's a part of it.
Big
Our
drive.
our issue is that we have a fairly sizable elderly population that don't have the physical capacity to do it. So there may be other ways to accommodate that through the community garden effort. Because we are short of space for that. We're having a hard time finding somewhere to have the community garden. So if there are some vacant spots in Trowbridge or whatever that people would allow to be used, we could do that. We could control the weeds in that area and use that as a community garden site.
We save that conversation for another time?
Yep. Really, there's not a whole lot different, other than the premise that they've done. Like I said, it's very much a mirror image of 2014's budget with some very relatively minor changes. Kirk is here, the Public Works area. There's one comment that I did make on Kirk's. It was not necessarily a recommendation, but it was a consideration item. One of the things that we've dealt with and that the board has had issues with over years, it basically has been call out and overtime in the Public Works area. Kirk did make a request for an additional position, and I had thrown out there that if the board wishes to go in that direction and wishes to improve the service and the maintenance and things such as that, one of the things that I would like to see is 2 shifts. We could have coverage from 6 o'clock in the morning till 10 o'clock at night, essentially eliminate call-out for all intents and purposes, and eliminate most of the overtime, and provide the opportunity on those evening hours to catch up on some of the maintenance that isn't being done currently with a smaller crew. Most of the interruptions that we get due to calls is during the daytime. So, I mean, I threw that in my narrative basically as a discussion item for consideration. It's not in the budget.
If you guys looked in your books under Randy's general narrative, and he did discuss it, and the cost, the impact to add 1 service worker, 42,770, and split between wastewater and water.
Correct.
And he made the comment at the bottom underneath the wastewater about what would happen if we were able to add 2 service workers, and what that would look like. Recognizing that last year's overtime pay was an anomaly.
Yeah, it was.
Although no guarantee that we don't have another brutal winter this year like we had last year. And so it's not like it couldn't happen again. It could, but it really was an anomaly last year, and you don't have to look very far to see the impact, not only across the UP, but across the state and across the nation in so many areas.
Mm-hmm. And much of the overtime that we incur is due to alarms, and those alarms typically are outside of the normal work hours of the service workers. Yeah, and if we had the ability to have that 2-shift type operation, we could take care of those on the clock, and there would not be 2 hours of overtime for every call out.
I also want you to speak to your narrative, Randy, under wastewater. You talked about both under water and wastewater, and the board had arbitrarily imposed a no more than 2% increase limitation to sales rate increases for both enterprise funds. And he was able to stay within that 2% limit. But he also in order to make that happen, necessitated the elimination of the contribution to the general fund.
Correct.
And so the impact that that has on the general fund, on you, on the fund that you specifically manage, in order to meet that 2% limitation that was board imposed.
Right, it's a $12,000 hit on the revenue side.
Right. And I think it's just important to note for the board as you're going through the narrative that some of the things that we had required, and, the board had given Kirk the directive last year that we wanted to see you limit any rate increases to 2% or less for the next 3 years. Kirk worked hard to maintain that. As you know, I wasn't comfortable with that limitation last year, and while he's able to do it this year by eliminating the contribution to the general fund, just be cognizant of the fact that, again, I say it every year, but our rates are set by ordinance, and make sure that you, again, pull the ordinances, read them as we enter our budget conversations, and fully understand, and if you don't, after all these years, understand how that ordinance sets the rates. Schedule some time with myself or with Superintendent Page or Manager Gerard, and we'll walk through it again on how the rates come about. But I think it's really important for each individual board member to understand where those rates come from, and when we set arbitrary limits on those, that may have farther-reaching implications. I think that he can manage with a 2% over the next few years. I don't think that's going to bankrupt the township by any means, but just be cognizant of how it's set. The other thing I would say is that with the CIP, as we all know, it's not the document that we envision having in our hands at this time next year. Hopefully with the work of our planning commission, now that they've moved past their zoning text amendments and new land use descriptions, that they're going to start working on a new CIP that's much more functional and much more interactive, so that when we start to look at your budget, you look at your CIP to look at any capital expenditures, and we have to ask ourselves those questions. Did we do what we say we were going to do? When you look at, our strategic plan, are we accomplishing the things we said we were going to accomplish by this budget? Did Kirk meet our ordinance requirements with this budget? And are the requests that are being made in our capital improvements planning in the CIP right now? And if not, why not? And should we update it as part of this process and have the planning commission add additional sheets in, whether from anyone's department? Those are all things that, as you prepare your budget, it's not just this book. You've got to look at those external directives, our master plan, our CIP, our strategic plan, and our ordinances, in order to know whether this budget actually meets the board's directives for next year and beyond.
Correct. Now, the other thing that's different in this budget is we have, because of our collective bargaining agreements, they all have the same language in them for wage incremental change. There's a factoring process that's in there. That factor has yielded slightly over 2% over the last several years, so we built in a flat 2% across the board. So that money is already in the budget, the 2%, and if that comes out less, then we'll adjust it. If it comes out a little higher, we'll have to adjust it that way. But that's an automatic, that we've agreed to in the collective bargaining process, and then all of the roll-up benefits have been calculated to include that 2%.
Pete?
First of all, I'd like to thank Kirk for taking time for me. Once we sat in his office together in the conference room, and we just chatted about the budget. And I guess the biggest thing I got from Kurt was where we're heading down the road. I just sat down and chatted why he's doing what he's doing, what does the need of the township has to be in the future. And I think I learned a lot more that way, and the reasons behind some of this stuff right here and what he's working for. And I'm surprised the foresight that he has for thinking ahead on some of these projects. And, and you just think of numbers, but there's more than numbers behind Kirk. He's got a vision of where he wants to take the township, and I think we should be happy about it. You should just take the time to sit down with him he don't beat you up too bad, but I mean, there's a lot of knowledge there, and after a while, after you talk to him, you look at this thing at home, you go, oh, that's where he's going with that. That's the reason. And then when we're talking about it, and after you start going through this year after year, and you can just see it happening. We talked about this 3-4 years ago, and we knew we were going to have a problem with the sewer and water. But look, and now the people are walking up to him and say, hey, I want this, And so he does have the foresight ahead of him. And so listen to him. He's not just pushing numbers in front of us. There's a reason behind it, and there's long-range planning in it. So take the time to talk to him.
Just a couple of additional comments that I want to make. There are a couple of things that you're probably aware of, but probably not in the front of your mind. First of all, We Energies is on the decline. We obtain revenue from We Energies when they deposit ash to our landfill up in the north part of the township. I have cut that by a third in this coming budget because we are anticipating there's going to be a drawdown. There's going to be less. They're going to be drawing that ash out. They'll be taking it out and shipping it out to use in construction projects, and so we won't be having that volume coming in any longer as they continue to draw down. So I've reduced that in the revenues, under other revenues, which is right in the center of the revenue page, line 672. I've reduced that down by a third. You can see the impact of the library not being included any longer, and you can also see the impact of the not getting the transfer in from the solid waste, from the wastewater. On the expense side, in General Services Administration, I don't know if any of you picked up on it now that we are converting to Peninsula Fiber Network to replace Charter. The reason we're doing that is reliability and ability to grow. We're just not getting the speeds from Charter, and we're just not getting the uninterrupted service and a lot of issues that we're having with Charter. So we are making the switch to Peninsula Fiber Network. They have the fiber run to the Public Works facility, and they will be tying the Township Hall and the Fire Department into that fiber. So we will be having that here very shortly, doing that transition. So it's going to cost about $2,000 a year more for that service, but we've spent a lot more than that in maintenance time and in service time in the last year.
Although I agree with the concept of spending time with the information people, that's a lot of good knowledge that somebody might spend a half an hour with Kirk or something that the rest of the board doesn't have. And I can't justify not having spent the time with them, and I can't justify adding another half hour, an hour to our work sessions. So I don't know, I wrestle with that. The questions that I would ask, I spent a half an hour last year with them. Oh, it's more than that. Probably an hour and a half. And then Randy came in. I mean, that's good information that the rest of the board doesn't have. And I don't know how to justify which way to do that. Bringing the questions here so that we can all hear the answers. We've done that with emails, too. We've said the same thing.
And here's what
here's
I would say, Lynn, realistically, that's the way the board's supposed to work. If all 7 of us go out and dig into different areas that we have an interest in and try to gain that knowledge, the information, we have a question, we don't understand how this works, or why are you requesting the addition of a service worker, or what about future planning? Each of us takes it from a different perspective, and we go out there and we spend time, we get those questions answered. Kirk doesn't care if 7 people go in and sit down and ask the same 7 questions, because we'll ask different follow-up questions. We'll come at it from a different angle. We all come at it from our own experiences and perspectives. So when we leave there, we've gained a certain amount of knowledge that helps us understand the budgeting process better, and it helps us share information amongst our other board members during the budget work sessions. I look at those, it's the way a board is designed to work. Everybody goes out and gathers their own information. It's why there's laws that are very restrictive about board members outside of public meeting need to be on their own. They go out and they go do the work. They go out and do their homework. then we come together collectively. We've each done our own individual homework, and now we share what we've learned as we move forward. Our perspectives are all different, and that's where the benefit comes in. We can have better informed discussions at the board level once we've all done our individual homework.
Yeah, that's just what I wrestle with, though, because it just seems like we're doing something 7 times. What if we all do have the same question?
That's okay. Go ahead, the same question to Kurt.
In my opinion, that is the best way to, one-on-one, is the best way. It's beneficial to both, because in a group setting, everybody tends to head in the same direction. But if it's one-on-one, not only do you gain hopefully additional information, knowledge, I do too, because everybody will ask a different question, they'll come at the same question, perspective. So I learn more too. It's not just like presenting you with all these numbers. If we can have a one-on-one conversation, in my opinion, that's way better.
Well, if I can just add a little bit, from my perspective, I actually, same thing, I will take the time. I don't care whether it's a weekend, night, whatever, I'll take the time to meet with board members, because it's not just the subject that you come in to talk about, it's the other subjects that come up in the discussion as we're talking about it. We bleed off to something else. Well, what about this? Well, what about that? And that's really where you get the information exchange, and it breaks down barriers. I mean, it breaks down barriers between, the ability of folks to just say, that's not right. What, tell me how about this. Tell me how this works. So it's an educational tool, but even more than that, it creates kind of a social atmosphere where, you feel more able to talk freely, from that standpoint. Realistically, the budget that's in the manager recommended column, in my opinion, is a livable budget. I mean, we can do that. We can live within this budget and still have $33,000 to put towards something else if something comes up. But on the other side of the coin, if we're successful at the Supreme Court level, we could have as much as $177,000 to put towards the principal on these buildings, or some other major project. I mean, we've got Lions Field pretty much funded. We've got the ice rink funded. We've got the kiddie park funded. I think we've got the pavilion funded. I think we've got everything we need for Lions Field right now. But there are some other things that we'd like to do. I mean, we've got the access to the Dead River system just off of Forestville Road that we've never done anything with, and and that could be fixed up to be much more usable. It's not ours. Well, it's not ours. I mean, it belongs to the state, but we could assist with that. I mean, there are a number of things that you could do, and what I'm trying to do is to pull back basically to what we have historical records on. And if you look back over the historical records, and if you go back into the page that goes back years back, that's what I'm trying to do, is get back to what that trend is, and basically live with the trend as opposed to guessing what we're going to try and spend and then having a little bit to come back with. We've got some challenges coming up, but we've got some great opportunities coming up. We've got 3 pretty nice projects right now that we're working that, if they come online, which we expect they will be breaking ground yet this year, this fall, are going to increase our tax base somewhat. Even if the Supreme Court rules against us, it's not a killer. It's going to cost us about $90,000 in taxes. To put that into perspective, if Mason's Bluff comes online, that's $100,000 a year in property taxes. If it comes online and those 35 to 40 lots are developed, it generates $100,000. Plus, they're on the water system and the sewer system. So, those are additional customers that decrease, in essence, the cost, but have a revenue as well. We still have some threats, for sure. There's no question about that. We have some threats and some unknowns out there, but realistically, I think we're generally in pretty good condition from the general standpoint compared to a lot of the communities around us.
I think if we take the time during this budget process to really think about the state of our township, the state of our township is strong. I mean, we have historically done a real nice job of managing growth and preparing to meet the needs for the future, and it's paid dividends for us. The reason that we've had the unprecedented growth through an economic downturn that we had is because of the planning from this board and prior boards on being prepared to meet the future demands and keeping looking forward. I mean, hats off to Superintendent Page and Manager Gerard. They've done a fantastic job during their tenure of making sure that the board remains focused on managed growth, manageable growth. I mean, we are a very affordable community to live in. It's what makes us so attractive. And it's because of the appropriate planning. It's because we follow the master plan. It's because we've got a really strong planning commission. I mean, our planning commission is fantastic, in my opinion. I think they do just an incredible amount of work and just a great job. And the board, I mean, we've got a great legacy as a board on what we've accomplished in the years that we've been together and the roadmap that we're laying out before us so that the next people who occupy these seats are going to continue in that tradition. Going through the budget process, I mean, is always somewhat contentious, but it's really time to take stock at, who we are and what we've accomplished and where we're going. And, I mean, Clerk Rattari and I were having a conversation one day in our office, and we were talking about the budget and, some of the changes and requested. And so we called Kirk in, and I said, the board's not going to support hiring another service worker. We don't agree with it. We're throwing that out of the budget. Why would we want to have another service worker here? And he's looking at me like, where is this coming from? Where is this going? But I put him on the defensive, and I'm like, no, seriously. I said, I don't see any need for it. And Kirk's really good. He just says, well, here's why. And he goes into an explanation and walks us through it. And at the end, I said, thanks, that's all I wanted. I just wanted to know why you were requesting it.
Exactly.
But it's a way to get that information and to be comfortable. And I would love it if 7 people went into Kirk's office and said the exact same thing. I don't know what you're doing with this. I don't agree with it. I'm throwing it out right now. It's never going to happen. And let him explain it to you in the way he can, because you'll see that he'll give you a very logical explanation and walk you through the ordinances and why he does what he does and where he's at. And at the end of it, you may or may not agree with his assessment of the need, but at least you'll have a fact-based decision to make at that time.
And here's just to give you a little bit of perspective of what you've been dealing with. We tracked a lot of historical data. And between 1984 and 2014, the value of Marquette Township has increased 859%. Yeah, and if you break that down, in 1984, our value was $33,400,000 was the value in 84. You jump that down to 98, which is about halfway, it was only up to 94.4. So you only picked up about 60 million in value. But from 1998 to now, you go from 94.4 to 275.6. That's a huge increase in just that short period of time in taxable value, and that's all growth. But in that same period of time, Dan, how long has the fire department been in existence? 70? 75? How many people did you have on staff in 75? Roughly.
I don't know. When I was on staff in 80, it was around 30.
What are you at now? Yeah, so you haven't, we've had exponential growth in this community that have put direct demands on services like the fire department, but they're still at the same level they were at 1980 in terms of bodies available. So I mean, those are some of the things that you have to at least be cognizant of and look at. And I think if you look at where our utility infrastructure was in that time frame and where it is today, it's the same thing, and we've still only got 6 service workers. So our demands have dramatically gone up. Our revenue has gone up, consistently as well. So we can afford to be in good fiscal condition with regard to what we've got in the ground and things such as that. We're able to get by, but we're about to hit another growth spurt here in the next 2 to 3 years with some fairly major developments that are going to really put some demands on. If we get when the Up the Sky project goes forward, that's a 70-acre development all by itself. We've got another major retailer that we're working with right now. We've got a meeting Monday afternoon about a piece of property for them that's bigger than I think bigger than all of the other major big boxes that we've got right now. We've got an assisted living facility center coming in. We've got a child care development center coming in. All of these things are going to be happening here in probably the next 6 to 12 months. You're going to see them popping up, and it's going to have an impact on
Staff
everybody.
demands.
Well, it's going to have an impact on the roads.
$25 a square foot taxable?
Well, these guys haven't challenged it. They don't have a history. It was interesting because Walmart came in. As much as people complain about Walmart, they came in and they said, we're not going to do that. What do you think you can live with? And they negotiated a settlement with us. And the one we're talking to did the same thing in the communities that they're in. But it's, I think it bodes well. If the voters vote in the millage and we fix the roads in 3 years, this community is going to be at the top of the heap of any place in northern Michigan, not just the UP.
Yeah, I did a lot like you did, Randy, when you look at the township's state equalized value. You go back to 84 at 33.4, and I just did it every 10 years. You jump up 10 years to 68.9, jump another 10 years at 155, $1,700,000. Jump another 10 years, it's 275,600,000. And it just shows that exponential growth every 10 years in this township. Our value, because of development and growth, that's infrastructure in the ground, it's expansion of the services that are needed, and that's phenomenal growth. I mean, it's incredible growth. In 10 years, growth is phenomenal.
It's the DDA. It's having the DDA available and doing the infrastructure that they did. I mean, it's a bunch of things that all come together to make it work.
You start to, you really have to look at some of those as you put it into perspective when you start answering questions about staffing levels, staffing requests. When was the last time, I had them pull some of that information for me. That's what came out of those conversations is, when was the last time we made some adjustments to our personnel? So, I got the information pulled on when any positions were added or changed, and it's really interesting to see how we've grown and how we've managed that growth. But we haven't kept up with, as far as, adding our personnel. We've done a real nice job, I would say, of being able to keep pace with, still provide the services and not add employees. And it's just, you start to compare what the miles of infrastructure just from Public Works alone, and the pumping stations and grinder pumps and the amount of work those take to operate the water system. Now take and compare the number of employees we have and compare that to the city of Marquette. Yes, they've got a lot more laterals into homes and businesses. They have a bigger population, but the overall infrastructure is very comparable. And we've got grinder pumps, which certainly take up a lot more maintenance. And you check those staffing levels, look how many employees they do it with, check and see how many we do it with. We do a pretty nice job for the amount of folks that we have here. And those are, and it's a long way to answer your question, Lynn, but those are some of the things that I wouldn't know if I didn't sit down and start challenging them on some of those. Yeah, we can all do it in a meeting, but if I go and get this information, this is what I'm going to bring back and share when we have that conversation. You go and talk to them about it. You may go in a totally different direction and come back with different information than I had. I present what I found out. You present what you found out. We share that among 7 people, and then we can, hopefully make a much better informed decision. So that's why I encourage everybody to take the time to sit individually with each department head and try to get your questions answered.
Our largest threat, budget-wise, so just a second, our largest threat budget-wise going forward is the Affordable Care Act. That's our biggest threat going forward. The changes in January, and Supervisor Lehman knows more about these things than I do because he's involved in it, but an 18% whack in our health insurance is significant. Even though, we're sharing 80-20, that's still a huge increase. And we're about We got a request today, in fact, from one of the bargaining units to start talking about health insurance, because we did have in the contract that for 2014, we would cement what that benefit was going to be, but after that, it was open to one side or the other, opening it for discussion. We left it open for both sides. This year, this coming year, it's prescriptions, going in. The following, there's a whole series of changes year after year after year going forward that are going to be required. So we may have to take a look at our philosophical approach to health insurance and what we're doing. I mean, how we're providing, or are we providing health insurance? Retirement, we're pretty well funded on retirement. Our retirement plan, because we don't have turnover and we don't have a large staff, we're paying into it all the time, and it's invested, so it's growing. So we're in pretty good shape in terms of retirement funding, but health insurance is something else.
Pete?
Before I went to see Kirk, I looked at a map and looked at the green area in our area, not at the hospital, which we knew it was going to go in the city of Marquette anyways, but you look at the map and what's going to happen to our area, and that's one of my questions I ask her. Where are the people going to go? Where are they going to live? We can plan on the business area. We got the area, we got the sewer, we got the water, and that's good. Where are they going to live? Okay, we'll take the residential area. We got, we can go north, we can go south, we can go west, but they have to have water and sewer. And we're in the selling business. We sell water, we charge for the sewer, garbage. We're in the selling business. And the more it gets on, the more control we have it, and it's going to be cheaper for everybody. So that's what we have to have. We have to have a road from, say, from 492 over to make that area up there accessible, a little easier, so they don't have to have the congestion coming down this way. So the more we can get on our water system, the better off we're going to be. And he's planning for that, So the other day, a guy told me, he said, I had a problem with my grinder pump. I called up within an hour. I had a guy there to take care of it. We're going to improve our roads, all right? All of a sudden, when we start this the bib curbing, the water is going to generate down to collector. We have to be able to clean them things out, or we're going to have problems, and the water is going to flood in the road and crack the road if we don't take care of them. So don't be afraid to add another person on to take care of what we're going to plan for the future. Because no sense of throwing money away on roads if we're not going to take care of them. And part of taking care of it is taking care of the sewer, water, and the rest of it. So I just, you got to take a look at the big picture, not just today. So thank you.
Bernie?
Going back to our retirement and that, you always heard about me, unfunded liabilities and that. And that's what I'm concerned about coming up in the future and that, because we're going to have some retirees in the future and what that's all going to be. The meeting I went to that was put on by our retirement Mercers, and there was a lot of discussion that from other communities, managers and supervisors and everything else, and they were all concerned with the unfunded liability, and they were talking about some other types of retirement within that. And the more I listened, the more I said, we have to, as a board, have that individual come in and tell us what's out there in that too, so how it's going to affect us, because right now, if someone retires, we've got that unfunded liability continually for that. But there are some portions of the new retirement that once they leave, we're actually done with it. Similar with when I retired from Northern. When I walked out the door, Northern was done with me. It was all on my back. And I think those are things that we need to look at as to how it's going to affect us in the long run.
Yeah.
I have no idea which way to go, but I think we just need to get more information as to what we should be looking at for new employees, not for current ones, for all the new employees that would be coming in, how that's going to affect us in the long run on that too.
Yeah, there are options under MERS as well as others. We had basically a 401 plan is what we had 12 years ago when I came in, and people had nothing. I mean, they didn't have anything in their retirements because they're not good at managing investments. I mean, they don't watch the market and things such as that. So what they did is, at that point, we pre-funded a lot of it by rolling those balances in to pre-fund. So what's our funded level at right now? Do you recall? Overall, 69%, which isn't bad. I mean, 69% funded. I mean, we got a couple of folks that are kind of gray in the hair, but they're not planning on retiring anytime in the near future, unless they have to. But some even still have hair. But at any event, You know, from that standpoint, we're pretty well funded. In bargaining, this last time, we got rid of some of our unfunded liability with sick leave. We converted to kind of a disability plan, shared disability and shared sick leave. So, and comp time has been cut back. So we are dealing with some of those unfunded liabilities. I think we're in pretty good shape on our health, on our retirement plan, but certainly that's something the board can look at. There are different options. There are blends of different kinds of plans and things such as that. And, you know, and Ernie, you're right. When you were at Northern, you had two options, basically. One was more of a defined benefit plan, and the other was an investment plan. And depending which one you took, at some point in time, you did better than the other one. And, you know, it depends on when you retired.
But I was just concerned with the township looking in the long run, because I don't
Oh,
want
yeah.
to get into like Detroit and the rest of them
Oh.
have that big unfunded liability out there. I think
Well,
we need to
the-
start looking at this now.
The problem that some of those places have and that they're reeling from now is their investment philosophies. And some of them tried to handle their own investments. Like Detroit was a privately funded, they did their own retirement. They established their own retirement division and managed it, and they invested in some very bad investments because they had some very bad leadership that was capitalizing on those investments. And, you know, and so now they have nothing. But the ones, you know, the systems like the state retirement system and MERS, the municipal system, and some of those others, they're regulated, so they're not going out investing in Synagro and, you know, things like that. They're limited in what they can invest in.
I understand that. What I'm just concerned is when someone retires, that we still have a dollar
Oh, yeah.
amount that we're gonna have to continue to pay. And that's what I'm trying to look forward to the future, is on new employees to try and eliminate that.
Okay, now, here's where some people are running into trouble with that, and I'll explain to you why. We have a defined benefit retirement plan, which most public entities have a defined benefit plan. Basically, that means you work X number of years, you get this amount of money per month for, you know, as long as you live. What happened at Marquette County, we'll use them for an example, they had a defined benefit plan, and then they switched to a defined contribution plan, which is more of an investment plan. And they did that for all their new employees. So as their older employees on defined benefit retire and start drawing out of that pool, there's nobody putting money back into that pool because all the new employees are in a defined contribution plan. So you have to be careful that you don't cut off your funding source, because the benefit that's being paid out on the far end relies on the new income coming in from the employees that are hired today that aren't going to vest for 10 years. So if they don't work 10 years, that money stays in there. So that continues to build. So that's where some municipalities got into real trouble, is they did that as a definitely it was a short-term cost savings measure, but now it's catching them as their employees that were supposed to only live 70 years are living 90 years. And, you know, at one of our last board meetings, the actuary basically threw out an interesting perspective, and basically the actuaries are now saying that even though the average lifespan is still 85, that they're projecting benefits on, the first person to live to be 150 is alive today, based on medical advances, based on a variety of things. So, you know, so you're looking, the MERS system is looking that maybe 85 isn't what we want to be targeting our actuaries on. Maybe we need to be looking at 90 or 95 to do those actuarial assumptions. So you don't run into that where you've planned for this long and they're living that long and then their spouse lives longer than them. So, but that's what you have to be careful of, is not to cut off that infusion of new dollars into the plan that's going to help you fund that long-term benefit.
Sounds like the Social Security Administration.
Similar. But the problem is they funneled money off to other investments, and that's
I think
what happened.
utilizing what you just said, Randy, and getting that individual in and trying to put all this information together, so we can come up with some kind of
Absolutely.
plan. Now, we may say, hey, we're not gonna change it, and these are the reasons why. So a board coming in after us, we've already done a lot of the preliminary work, and these are the reasons why we're not moving that direction.
But you can do things like change your vesting period to be a longer period, so, you know, maybe 15 years instead of 10 years. So if they don't stay here for 15 years, that money stays in the fund, and it's there to fund, you know, going forward. So there are things that you could do. Right now, we're in pretty good shape.
That's kinda out of the budget, but actually it is, because you're looking long-term. with that.
The long term, right?
Which is what you need to do.
No, that's a good question, Ernie. Other general questions? you've had the budget transmittal for a few weeks now. Everyone's had a chance to get somewhat comfortable with it. Anything in here that you're lacking information on? Something that we can
Anything else you'd
provide,
like to see?
you know, that would help you work through this process? If you don't have an answer now, that's okay. Just submit it and make sure we get you the information that you need. Like I said, I sent out, like sure you have the CIP, the master plan, strategic agenda, enterprise fund ordinances. But what else could you possibly, what do you need as you're going through? Think about, you may want to go back and look at some of the materials you had over the last couple of years and what helped you make some of those decisions. And let's gather as much of that as we can so that, like I said, I'm really hoping that we have really effective, Dan laughed at me because of the comment about robust discussion, but they always are very robust discussions, and I know they will be this year. But I want to have as much information. More information is better than not enough, so.
And you are seeing a slight increase in revenue sharing. We did not get the big bump that everybody was talking about. Where you're in different plateaus, and we're on the lower plateau. So we got a little bump, but not much.
That first bump, as you talk for next year, will be on our fourth quarter.
Correct.
And then, that's just because of the way the state's laid out.
It's the way they lay out the distribution, so they retain it in their coffers for the maximum period of time.
I think to bridge the gap then between what you'd like and what I'd like, there is no justification anywhere in the documentation as to why any of these things change. Jason did a pretty good job of explaining why he was justifying raises and staying the same. The improvement I would make to his narrative would be to put the amounts on here. That makes it easier than flipping back and forth. But I don't think Kirk gives us enough justification for why. To say that you want to increase this particular fund. I think you could probably do it with just a couple sentences and make your very cryptic on your reasoning for wanting to do something, whether it's to stay the same or to have an increase, whether it's to put a new employee on or to buy a vehicle, and I think that would, if nothing else, encourage more questions, because it's hard to ask questions on something you don't know.
So as for instance, like, under law enforcement, we replace a patrol car every 2 years because generally the sheriff's department replaces their cars at 80,000 miles because that's what they've demonstrated is the time that they start to get into heavy maintenance and have, fairly heavy repairs. Something like that?
Yeah, and
Okay.
all you would have to say is probably one sentence that says, knowing we have to do this every 8 years, we're in year 4, so we're gonna have to start budgeting, and I'd like to set
Okay.
aside $5,000 for the next 4 years to do this, period. That would totally justify what you're asking for, and I think that's why there's so much discussion when we get to the water and wastewater, is because we don't have enough information, but we don't know what to ask. And whether we sit down with you or we sit and just look at the book, I go through and I just circle things and I think, should I understand that? Is that something we talked about before? Is it from the old budget? It's so time consuming. I have so little time anymore. I'm not trying to slipshod anything, but
You'd like to see more detail.
just a little, sometimes it just means, when you ask Randy a question, you get an answer the way I would give it. And a lot of times that drives people nuts because they start at the beginning and they say, this is what we're doing and this is why. And we go through the whole explanation. There's got to be a way, and I'm trying to even do it with my managers, of taking that huge explanation because we don't understand what Kirk needs anyway. And like you said in your email, there's no way we can be experts. There's no way we can follow him around and know we have to trust that what he's saying is right. But we don't understand it well enough to ask a question. So I think the simplest way would be add a line or two that justifies what you're asking for, but it's got to be in our terms. You can't give us a big engineering explanation. And maybe it's like
Fair enough.
Randy said, something that simple. Why are we doing this? Well, because every 8 years, we need to do this, and this is what the cost is, and this is why I'm recommending it.
Average life of a pump is X, we've got this many pumps, they're this old.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Your narratives on why you ask for money are fabulous. They're long, they're very detailed. That's why I don't even ask a lot of questions. In most cases, it makes sense. I just wanted even tonight a little bit of clarification on the insulation, because we're dealing with that too. So I have a point of reference with pipes and leaks and stuff, so I can ask that question. But if I don't understand your long-term goals, or even your short-term with hiring somebody, sure, it's great to know that it's $44,000 and you're gonna split it between the two departments. Why? When I have people calling me saying, how come those water people are always standing around? They're not doing anything. There's 2 of them driving a truck, and that's all I hear. That's my frame of reference. Yeah, I can come in and ask you. It's gonna be maybe an hour discussion, but there's gotta be a way to justify that in a couple sentences that says, we're looking long-term at the growth potential that we're gonna experience the next 3 or 4 years, so I see that coupled with the overtime that I'm trying to get rid of, having another person on staff. And this is how we do it between the 2 departments. Makes perfect sense. That's just a ballpark of what, the way my brain thinks. I don't know how, if I'm talking for anybody else. But it might just mean 1 or 2 more sentences to justify the request. And I think we could, take an hour or 2 easy out of your budget at the end of because we usually save you till last, because there's so much discussion.
Not this year, he's going first.
Okay.
And you're not gonna get an hour out of them. You don't get an hour out of Kirk.
Does that seem unreasonable or unattainable, or, I'm not saying redo the budget now. That's, all I'm saying is this is what I would, right.
One more detail.
Part of what I would say is that, again, this will bring up why it's good for you to go and sit down with them, because you do need more than other people do, right? You want to understand something in a different way. You want your explanation different, and everyone's different. We all give and receive information differently. Communication is such a two-way street, The person who's delivering it for the first time is really responsible to make sure that they're delivering it so that it'll be picked up as intended. And certainly that's what he's trying to do. It's thorough, but it's also, it's like an engineer's brain, delivered in an engineer's brain versus a conversational style, and you're more conversational. What happens if you go and spend time with Kirk, though, throughout this process, and you start asking those questions every year, like, well, why don't you just say that in here? Why don't you just say that the reason that you want to add somebody is because your ordinances require that you, develop, plan and maintain a system, and that you haven't been able to continue to maintain your system. You're not flushing hydrants, you're not doing this, you're not doing those things that are required by ordinance because you don't have enough personnel to accomplish those things. If you put that in here, then I can read it and it makes sense to me. If you have those conversations with him, then the next time he's drawn up a narrative, he starts to think, oh yeah, these are the questions I get. I'm going to put these into the narrative. Or if while you're having that conversation, you say that, man, this would be so much easier for me to understand. That's a benefit to everybody. It's a benefit to you because you get to have that time to have the explanation delivered the way you need it. It's a benefit to him because he changes the style that he's communicating in to reach more of the board members, right? That's why I really think it's important to do that one-on-one stuff. And yeah, it's your narrative is, it's got almost bullet pointed for a reason, right? It's short and sweet and just says, hey, here's the major changes, here's what's happening. Same budget, we're doing the same things, we have the same philosophy, that's changed. But here's some of the highlights of what's going on. You're probably right, in a couple sentences, he could fill in some more information or just a couple bullet points requesting this, why. If it's a capital improvement thing, the new CIP will help with those things as we develop that new CIP, and I can't wait till next year to see it, because I think it's gonna help so much with the budget process. When you look at the CIP, you know, a lot of the narrative when we refer back to the CIP, you know, is showing the CIP of 2015, you know, this is what we're doing, and I think as we start to really tie all those things together, I mean, when you look back, you know, at the back of water or wastewater, and you see some of the, you know, reasons why we're setting money aside and what it's for and the number of years, and it's been an item of discussion for many years. When those things are tied into that new CIP, and you really start to see a prioritization list and the reason behind it, and, you know, those things with that CIP being a much more narrative style, like the one we looked at earlier this year with the Planning Commission, you're gonna get more of that information. It's gonna say, we're doing this because we're required by ordinance to maintain, and therefore, this whole thing is about this. And I mean, you know, I wish we could have got it done for this year, because when I first started looking at those a year ago, I was like, oh man, this is what we need. And I knew it was too much to put on the Planning Commission with everything else going on, but, you know, they've got a relatively lighter load. And, you know, as a planning commissioner, that, you know, now you guys can jump into this thing, and it's even a benefit to us because we've got you as our planning commission liaison, who now understands how important that CIP is to us from a decision-making budgetary process. You get the opportunity to design that, right? So you get the opportunity to put some more of that in there. So for the major capital improvements, we'll get much better information. But for these types of things like you're talking about, wouldn't be in there. He can do a better job in the narrative. Sure, I mean, not everybody needs it. We all learn and see things differently, but his goal is to make sure that he's reaching as many of us as possible. You can help him get there by taking that time to spend time with him. And I don't want to throw anything else on you. I mean, we all got our own lives going on, but I think 45 minutes spent with Kirk and each one of us individually will save us, you know, 5 hours in budget talks. So it's worth the investment from our standpoint to invest 45 minutes of our time and his time on what it will save us collectively. Randy?
In the CIP, basically, the way I envision the CIP and the budget document is there'll be individual pages in each of the departments in terms of what their CIP items are, if they have any CIP items, how long it's been, what it's anticipated to be, how much is in there, you know, so that would be a separate page in the budget under each tab. And the other thing that we're gonna need to revisit is, and you'll see it in the revenue if you look at it, the community center rentals, nowhere near what we projected it was gonna be, because the most of the use has been non-revenue use. It's been local government meetings, it's been senators and representatives holding meetings here. We've had only a fraction of the actual, like, showers and parties and things like that. There've been quite a few of them, but roughly $6,000 worth. But far and away, the most of the use has been non-revenue use. Township groups, professional groups, you know, that benefit the township, state offices, state operations, using it for training. So we need to revisit and look at that fee schedule for the use of it, and some of those freebies should probably be paying something.
Well, and that's something that I think that we need to revisit. You're right, that the board needs to make a decision that we kind of made. We didn't know what we were getting into. We didn't have
no
any
idea.
frame of reference, and I think as we looked at it and said, if there's something that benefits the township, or if it's a local government entity, yeah, we'll make it available, especially if it's during the day. We're here anyway. There's really no cost involved other than the lights on, I guess. But in reality, you know, it does cost us something, and we're letting everybody use it. We may want to rethink that.
Yeah, we have maintenance and cleaning costs and setup costs and things like that. We're not recovered.
Even as a nominal fee, we should maybe charge for other entities.
Either that, or we look at it the other way and say, are our rates too high and it's discouraging people from coming in and
No, we're
having
too
showers
low.
and parties?
That's not.
We're really low.
That's not the case.
I know we looked at the
We're being
ones
told,
around us.
Lots of folks are telling us that in 2015, they're gonna be coming here, they're gonna be coming here, because they're here for other things, they're here for other meetings and that. So this
a great place, we're gonna be here. So I know we're booking 15 and 16 already, for it. But this year, it's turned out to be mostly governmental users and groups, professional groups, which is fine. I mean, we're getting good exposure, we're getting a lot of people, the whole intent was to get folks to come into this part of the township, and they are. And it's benefiting some of the development that's going on out there.
We've got about 10 minutes. I think it might be a good time to set our calendars if everybody's willing to take a look at your calendar. And our next regularly scheduled meeting is when, October 7th. So if you look at your calendar between then and now.
You really want to start with water?
Yes.
Pretty well set, yeah.
Dum, da, dum, dum.
No.
You've got, we've actually got 3 weeks before our next meeting. Right? 1, 2, 3. So it would be, I will be out of town next week on the 23rd and 24th.
Randy's out on the 25th.
But I would be available on the 22nd, 25th, or 26th.
I'll be out of town on the 26th.
22nd, next Monday?
No, Mondays are bad.
The
I can do
30th.
it if I have to.
Start on the 30th.
25th evening or afternoon late. How's that for anybody? I'm tied up till probably 3.
25th?
What time?
What's that look for everybody?
As long as it's evening.
Mr. Gerard,
6 o'clock?
are you
then?
good on the 25th?
25th
What time is your meeting?
I guess
September?
6 to 7:30.
Okay.
That's a Friday, isn't it?
Yeah,
Thursday.
Thursday.
Yeah, I'm there Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, coming back Friday.
Okay, so Randy wouldn't be here.
I won't be there at 6.
And he won't be either.
Well, then, the following week is the 29th through the October 3rd. Okay.
What are we looking for, an hour? Or what were you thinking?
2 hours,
2 minutes.
perhaps on the 30th in the evening, 5 to 7, 6 to 8, whatever.
Either.
Can everybody be available from 5 to 7?
Tuesday?
The
Yep.
30th.
Let's go 30th from 5 to 7 p.m. And Kirk, that will be kicking off water. Well, how far can we go, baby? If we can get the whole thing wrapped up, I'm all in, right?
Water/wastewater.
Water/wastewater. That also gives you, that gives you 2 weeks from today to get your opportunity to any additional questions, any concerns, anything to Kirk before the 30th so that he can be prepared to assist us in those deliberations. And then are there any other dates after that, October 1st or 2nd? I don't want to haul anyone in on a Friday night necessarily, but Thursday the 2nd? Okay, Wednesday the 1st is.
The roads thing is here from 6
Yeah.
to 7 Wednesday, unless we do it like 4 o'clock or.
They're here to 6, we'd have to do it at like 4 to 6. Or we could do it 5 to 6 and just do a 1-hour session, because it'll be 2 hours the night before. 5 to 6 on October 1st.
I'll have to leave it right at 6 though, too.
And they'll have another meeting, and they'll be
Yeah,
setting
they'll
up
be
for
here
the
at
road,
6.
so it'll work, they'll kick us out anyway.
I'll leave at 10 too then.
And then that's going to bring us up to the following meeting will be the 7th, and we'll put it on the second forum discussion for the 7th.
So we're gonna do back to back, right? The 30th and then the 1st?
Yep.
Okay.
Since I would have spaced it like once a week, but we just can't seem to make next week work. I'm gone for 2 days, and then Randy's gone, and
7th, we're going to do it again.
then the 7th, we'll do it in that second forum discussion, so we'll have at least an hour and a half for discussion, most likely there, too.
Do we want to try to pick what we're going to do those days? Or does it matter?
I think if we do, the only thing that matters is that we alert, like Bob ahead of time, that, so he knows when to be, and then we get our questions to him. But I would think that with water and wastewater, historically, I would say that, see where we're at on October 1st. You know, that would have been 3 hours we spent on water and wastewater, and then we'll have a better feel for what we're gonna be doing on that forum discussion. And if we had to, we could switch to general fund with Randy and then come back to fire and go from there. But that'll at least get us the first 3, and then we'll reset our calendars starting on October 7th again. We have to set a motion to do those?
Yeah.
When we come.
Well, we're-
do it in
Roads is on the
discussion.
7th, right?
He's gonna close
Yeah,
the,
okay. 'Cause
he's
I
gonna
got-
close
then we
the
got
forum
election at
discussion.
6:30,
and
so,
make a
yeah.
motion.
Okay. So, if there's nothing else, we'll go ahead and if there's no objections from any board members, we'll close the forum discussion on the budget session, and we'll move back into, the next agenda item, which is,
Well,
set the calendar and then adjourn.
I'll make a motion that we set the budget calendar, because I have to post them. Will be, the first session will be Tuesday, 9/30th, from 5 to 7, and that'll be in water and wastewater. The next date will be the following date, October 1st, from 5 to 6 p.m. And I'm not setting a topic, because I don't know where we'll be. And then the third session will be on the second forum discussion of Tuesday, October 7th. And that, and I'll have to post it as such. That's a motion.
I'll support it.
We have motion and support to set the, budget calendar, at least for the next 3, sessions. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. Now I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Support.
We have motion.
supported.
I was like, wow, nobody wants to leave. We have motion and support to adjourn. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.